Alright, X-fans, let's take a trip back to 1992, when the X-Men cartoon first hit the TV screens. This Marvel comic book adaptation wasn't just an ordinary Saturday morning cartoon. It kicked off a mutant fever that had us all dreaming of joining Professor X's superhero squad. And today, we're covering it from start to finish. Here we go. But before we jump into the first season's explosive episodes, let's meet the heroes who are gearing up for their crucial mission. First up, we have Cyclops, the leader and the poster boy of the X-Men. He is a level-headed commander of the X-Men, and a powerful mutant who can shoot from his eyes. Don't let his stoic demeanor fool you, because those optic blasts pack a serious punch. Next, we have the one and only Wolverine, the man with adamantium claws and serious rage issues. But let's be real, who wouldn't be pissed off if they had metal claws forcibly implanted into their body? Still, you can't help but love his berserker rage attitude and those killer adamantium claws. Speaking of attitude, let's talk about the weather goddess herself, Storm. This African queen could literally rain on your parade with just a flick of her wrist. Then we have the Southern Belle with a killer touch, Rogue. One touch of her skin and you're out like a light, and she might just absorb your powers too. Talk about a major dating hurdle. But hey, at least she can fly. And of course, next we have the fuzzy blue fur-brained of the X-Men, Beast. This guy is a complete package. Brilliant mind, acrobatic skills, and a wicked sense of humor. Plus, you could probably give him the best bear hugs ever. Next up, we have the telekinetic X-Men, Jean Grey. This redhead could move objects with her mind and even take control of your thoughts. And how can we forget Jubilee, a typical rebel teenager who would blind you with her dazzling fireworks. And who else could rock a bright yellow trench coat like it was nobody's business? Last but not least, we have Professor X, the wise, bald-headed telepathic leader dropping knowledge bombs, and also the glue that holds the X-Men together. Without his guidance and dream of coexistence between humans and mutants, the X-Men would never exist. Though, let's be honest, his shiny floating wheelchair was the real star of the show. Just kidding. Anyway, the series begins with Jubilee overhearing her foster parents plan to turn her into the mutant registration program. Nothing like some quality family bonding time over betraying your mutant daughter's trust. Upon learning this, she escapes from her house and soon encounters a giant sentinel on a mission to capture the girl. When the Sentinel nearly captures her, Gambit, Rogue, and Storm come to the rescue, ready for a robot smackdown. The X-Men save the day and welcome Jubilee to their secret base, which has all the charm of an underground bunker. No wonder she tries to escape, mutant or not. But she soon learns all about these mutants and their gifts. Maybe this mutant thing isn't so bad after all.
Professor Xavier is our leader, and he has named us the X-Men.
In spite of her newfound wisdom, she escapes from the mansion to check on her foster parents. And surprise, surprise, it's a trap. She gets grabbed by the shady mutant hunters, and it turns out the so-called mutant registration program is actually a front for tracking and eliminating the mutants. So the X-Men waste no time. They head to their headquarters to save Jubilee and destroy their database of all the other mutants. However, as they're about to open the door, Wolverine finds out there are some enemies ready to attack them. So Storm uses her power to blow up the place, and the X-Men escape after smashing the mutant records. But waiting outside are a group of Sentinels looking to smash them instead. These robots just don't seem to quit. A huge fight breaks out with our heroes battling the giant bots. But tragedy strikes as Morph says goodbye to the X-Men while saving Wolverine, and Beast is captured by the government.
Morph. He's gone.
Luckily, the X-Men regroup to track down the Sentinels' home base headquarters. After infiltrating the robot base, they save Jubilee from the anti-mutant gang. She says a final goodbye to her foster parents and decides Xavier's school is her best bet. When Beast is enjoying his time reading The Animal Farm, he is saved by none other than Magneto, who's introduced as the ideological opponent of Professor X. Surprisingly, both were colleagues in the past, working together at the same hospital when the latter was still known as Magnus. Over time, Magneto became increasingly radicalized regarding mutant rights, embracing lethal applications of his magnetic powers. This forced the once close friends to take different paths. I guess you could say their friendship just wasn't very magnetic. He orders Beast to leave the prison, but he refuses, saying that he would go through a fair trial. In the trial, Beast tries convincing the judge, but the judge denies his bail, leaving Beast to rot in the prison for some more days. Poor Beast. Meanwhile, the savage mutant Sabretooth enters the scene, stoking chaos at the court before getting severely injured.
His name's Sabretooth. Wolverine knows him. And hates him.
Cyclops brings Sabretooth to the X-Mansion for recovery, but Wolverine is not happy with that. Oh boy, things are getting interesting. And just when things couldn't be worse, there's an emergency, and the X-Men run to the rescue where they confront Magneto. He quickly crushes and then launches the missile as the X-Men watch it hopelessly. Xavier goes inside Sabretooth's mind to help him with his anger issues. The X-Men inform Xavier that Magneto now sees them as enemies after launching the missile attack. Xavier then asks Wolverine for his assistance in helping Sabretooth recover from his past trauma and anger problems. Meanwhile, Magneto cooks up his next scheme to crush humans, this time attacking a chemical plant. Cyclops, Storm, and Rogue zoom over to stop him, but they're soon crushed, leaving Jubilee alone with a restrained Sabretooth back at the mansion. Senator Kelly announces his presidential campaign and plans to imprison all mutants. Feeling sympathy, Jubilee loosens Sabretooth's restraints only to have him grab her, revealing it was all a trick by Magneto to take the school. Right when he nearly sends Jubilee to the abode, Wolverine saves her, and the two cats fight until Xavier stops it.
I was wrong, Wolverine. I should have listened to you.
Meanwhile, Magneto vows to raise a mutant army against humanity and Xavier. In this episode, we're introduced to the Morlocks as a community of mutants forced to live underground due to the extreme physical mutations that have made them outcasts from society. Led by the ruthless Callisto, she rules with an iron fist, but her fashion sense is more 80s punk than modern militant. But when Cyclops and Jean get ambushed on their date by Morlocks, things get messy. They capture Cyclops and Jean, and Callisto demands Scott to be her boyfriend in exchange for Jean's life. Luckily, Jean sends a psychic SOS to Professor X, asking for help before she goes unconscious. Here's where Storm steps up and challenges Callisto for the leadership of the Morlocks. In the climax, Storm snatches victory from Callisto and declares herself as the leader of the Morlocks, but soon gives it back to Callisto until humanity accepts the mutants. Cyclops and Jean embrace each other, while Wolverine watches in disappointment.
Cyclops is waiting for me.
So am I.
Feeling like a third wheel to Jean and Cyclops' romance, Wolverine heads to the freezing Arctic. But little does he know his buddy Sabretooth is waiting for him. Actually, they don't like each other, so that's just, I'm being sarcastic. Long story short, Wolverine gets whooped and ends up stranded in freezing water. He gets rescued by an Inuit village community and finds some welcome serenity, although Sabretooth remains an ominous threat to that peace. Back at the X-Mansion, Gambit floats an investigation into rumors that the island nation of Genosha is a mutant sanctuary, though Cyclops pushes back hard. Professor X, however, approves it as a worthwhile investigative mission. Storm assumes leadership of the team consisting of Gambit and Jubilee. They depart, seeking the promised safe haven for mutants.
Hey, check this out. Ask about our mutant discount.
Sabretooth finds Wolverine, and with the help of a snitch, this guy, and kidnaps all the villagers, tying them on the ice bridge with bombs waiting to explode. They both start their usual brawl, but this time, Wolverine pushes Sabretooth down the cliff and saves the villagers. Just when Storm, Gambit, and Jubilee are having a great time, it soon takes a dark turn, when they, along with other captive mutants, are turned into slaves. Not so much a mutant paradise after all. They're forced to build a dam to power a Sentinel factory, which makes Storm furious. She tries to shut down their oppressive operation fast, but instead gets locked solo in a tiny cell, activating her claustrophobia. However, the clever Gambit plays a trick.
They don't like me, don't trust me. They're just using me. Like you.
He pretends to betray his fellow mutants, ratting out Jubilee's escape attempt to gain the guards' trust. Once outside, he returns to free Storm and Jubilee in an action-packed jailbreak. The X-Men crew take the fight back to Genosha's mutant-hating mastermind. Storm uses her power to destroy the dam, and in the process, she faints, only to be rescued by Rogue. The crew reunites, only to find their mansion smashed to pieces and Professor X missing.
Something tells me the professor wants to be found while he's still breathing.
While tracking the mansion smasher, Jubilee discovers a crazy strong Russian mutant named Colossus, demolishing a construction site. Wolverine joins her, and the three have a squabble before Wolverine finally sniffs out that he's not the culprit. Annoyed, the big man leaves before saying, "You Americans are crazy," at least like 3 times.
You Americans are all crazy.
Leave him alone!
Meanwhile, the real mansion smasher, Juggernaut, who's Xavier's stepbrother, is on a bank-busting rampage. This unstoppable jerk is dropping buildings and hurling trucks for fun until the X-Men finally clash with him and Colossus. It's a three-way throwdown of brute force. As Juggernaut's helmet gets snatched, Jean fries his mind to stop the carnage. With the muscular threat neutralized and evidence pointing to Juggernaut as the real mansion attacker, the X-Men finally befriend Colossus. In episode 9, we come to know that Worthington has been funding Dr. Adler to find a cure to erase mutant powers. Cable was definitely not happy with that, and attacks Worthington only to know that the docs moved to Muir Island. On the other side, the X-Men are busy fixing up their mansion after the last throwdown. Wolverine and Gambit get into a spat, but Rogue breaks it up, though not before Wolverine accuses her of having a soft spot for Gambit. At a team meeting, Professor X drops the news on Dr. Adler's experimental treatment. Rogue decides to jet to Muir Island to get cured,
I don't want to live my whole life without knowing what it's like to touch another human being.
even with Gambit asking her not to. But plot twist, the real Dr. Adler is no more, and Mystique has been posing as the Doc to capture any mutant seeking a cure. However, just when everything was going as per Mystique's plan, chaos breaks out, and Rogue uses her powers to stop the other mutants. With Plan A foiled, Mystique sets her sights on turning Worthington next for Apocalypse. Mystique's got Worthington right where Apocalypse wants him, sticking him with the fake mutant cure. Right when it seems too late, she reveals herself, and Worthington undergoes a freaky transformation into Archangel, a metallic-winged brute programmed to destroy. Meanwhile, on Muir Island, the X-Men find a bunch more bummed-out mutants wanting the cure. But Cyclops says there's nothing wrong about being a mutant. These horsemen then crash the World Peace Conference in Paris, then start crushing military bases, farms, and dams all over Europe.
A powerful mutant, driven completely mad by his powers.
Professor X recognizes Archangel as the one from Muir Island and sends Rogue back there to investigate. When she confronts Dr. Adler, aka Mystique, Rogue finds out that the disguise and tries to stop her, but ends up destroying the lab. Meanwhile, the X-Men are battling the Horsemen in Paris, and Rogue absorbs Archangel's dark side. But Apocalypse escapes through a secret trapdoor before the X-Men can nab him. The future looks grim in the Sentinel-controlled world, so a time traveler called Bishop is sent to the past to warn the X-Men. According to his history records, one of the X-Men will soon assassinate a politician, sparking anti-mutant chaos and enabling the robot takeover. In the present, Bishop finds himself dumped in the past with spotty memories about his mission, but his handy transceiver confirms he's back in time to stop a politician assassination. However, Wolverine certainly isn't welcoming of the mysterious time traveler as they both exchange blows. Luckily, Professor X scans Bishop's memories of the Dark Sentinel-ruled future for answers.
Check, please. Time portal. Give me a break.
That earns Bishop some trust, but keeping the X-Men from violence won't be easy. Bishop doubles down and accuses Gambit of assassinating someone important. But who? The X-Men think it might be Senator Kelly, who is about to announce his presidential bid, so they head to Washington to stop any attack, while Wolverine grumpily watches over a fuming Gambit and the time traveler. But Gambit evades his claw-handed guard, crashing the political party just in time to catch Mystique impersonating him. Gambit clashes with his impersonator until Bishop barges in ready to zap both Gambits. Luckily, Rogue stops him first and sends him back to the future. Back to the dark future, Bishop finds nothing has changed, as stopping one assassination wasn't enough. The killer rabbit hole goes deeper than expected. Back in the present, Xavier visits Senator Kelly, only to find him kidnapped by Magneto. Oh boy, this can't be good. And oh boy, looks like the people are not happy after knowing that Magneto has kidnapped their senator. But plot twist, Kelly gets kidnapped by the Sentinels after thrashing Magneto in his own ship. With no choice, the X-Men got to join forces with Magneto to stop Master Mold from swapping Senator Kelly's brain with a computer, just like Bishop predicted. That Master Mold Sentinel became super smart and now wants to take over humanity. Looks like it's up to the mutants to save people who hate them. Talk about irony. It's an epic clash between the newly formed alliance versus the thousands of Sentinels. However, the X-Men and Magneto smash those bots to pieces. Magneto admits the X-Men are heroic fools for flying into this wild suicide mission, and Kelly calls off his anti-mutant plans, announcing that mutants are humans after all. And finally, Beast gets out of the prison. Finally, Scott and Jean get married in the presence of the X-Men, but it looks like someone is missing and definitely not happy with the marriage. That someone is none other than Wolverine, who is super bummed. and takes out his frustrations on Scottbot drones in the Danger Room. Meanwhile, Mr. Sinister has brainwashed Morph to take down the X-Men one by one. Morph is struggling with his split personality as his evil side shapeshifts into different X-Men to trick him. He first tricks Professor X, making him think that Magneto is in trouble, and sends the coordinates of Antarctica to meet him.
Come up to the rec room in 5 minutes and I'll show you.
Following that, he gets Gambit to smooch Rogue, sucking up all of his powers, and finally sends Jubilee into an anti-mutant group alone, all while Sinister watches in glee. While the X-Men are busy with Morph's pranks, Mr. Sinister kidnaps Cyclops and Jean on their honeymoon. Meanwhile, Beast finally busts out of the Danger Room and Gambit recovers from Rogue's smoot. Wolverine rescues Jubilee from the anti-mutant goons, complaining about all the sniffing he had to do. Just when things seem under control, Morph shows up disguised as Professor X, spreading a rumor that they're infected by some neurological condition. But Wolvie senses something is fishy, sniffs him out, and Gambit tricks Morph into revealing himself. The X-Men realize Cyclops and Jean are in danger, and they head to Sinister's island lair for an epic showdown with Mr. Sinister and the Nasty Boys. Meanwhile, in Antarctica, Professor X meets Magneto before they get buried in the raging avalanche. Down in Africa, a young boy named Majnari notices a freaky portal-like thing in the air that only he can see. Next thing you know, the Shadow King emerges and takes over the kid's body. Jean notices the psychic disturbance and asks Storm and Rogue to check it out. While traveling, the duo finds whole villages burned to the ground. Not a good sign. And Storm's old friend Shani informs them that it's Majnari, the very boy Storm saved at birth. He's behind this chaos thanks to his new shadowy guest. Over in the Amazon, Wolverine finds Morph playing as a bartender. After some not-so-friendly chit-chat, Morph tricks Wolverine and escapes into the jungle.
All I can think about is how much I'm in love with Cyclops.
Back in Africa, Storm confronts the Shadow King possessing Majnari. She agrees to let the Shadow King jump into her mind to free the boy. Once possessed, Rogue tries using her power absorption skills, but Storm pushes her away. Then Storm flies into the upper atmosphere until the lack of oxygen forces the Shadow King out of her body. She takes a nasty fall, but Rogue's got her back. Meanwhile, in Antarctica, Xavier and Magneto wake up stranded in the Savage Land with no powers. Not only that, but Xavier can suddenly walk again? They soon encounter supposedly hostile natives riding straight-up pterodactyls. Magneto nearly gets kidnapped until Xavier steps in, accidentally causing him to get swept away by the river. Finally, Professor X and Magneto reach the land where they meet the prehistoric creatures in the mysterious Savage Land. When Magneto asks about why Xavier saved him, they're attacked by the T-Rex, but soon bring it down. Meanwhile, in Russia, the metal-tentacled mutant Omega Red gets revived to help former Soviet generals reconquer the motherland. Colossus heads home to protect his people, and Jubilee tags along, leaving only a fridge note. When Wolverine discovers it, he is pissed, and he heads to Russia as well.
Give me back my family!
In an epic clash, Colossus, Jubilee, and Wolverine face the seemingly unstoppable Omega Red, even after the other X-Men finally arrive, complaining about the vague note. Quickly, the X-Men, along with Storm, freeze Omega Red with Darkstar's help, and spoil his plans. Well. Looks like our favorite Canadian beast is in for a wild ride this time around in Canada. Wolverine is lured back to the Great White North by none other than Heather Hudson, but little does he know, it's an ambush orchestrated by Alpha Flight. Talk about a warm welcome, or maybe a cold one. Vindicator reveals himself as the mastermind behind and manages to kidnap him. Next thing you know, Wolvie is strapped to a lab while Heather pulls off the ultimate betrayal. But wait, there's more. We get a flashback when the Hudsons took in Wolverine after his Weapon X escape.
The sedative drip before.
Fast forward to the present, General Chasen spills the beans about their failed attempts to replicate the adamantium and is puzzled about how it worked only with Wolverine. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, Heather has a change of heart and resigns from Department H, causing chaos in the lab. Wolverine seizes the opportunity and makes a break for it, warning Alpha Flight not to mess with him again. The episode starts with Cyclops in the Danger Room getting his butt kicked by some dangerous challenges, all because Gambit accidentally knocks up the difficulty level like a boss. That dude has the worst timing ever. He receives a call about his brother going missing, and turns out he had to deliver the tithe to the external. Anyway, Rogue shuts it down, and we get a flashback to Gambit's past where he's delivering the tithe. Late as usual, and the externals are not happy with that. So Gambit goes to New Orleans to save his brother from the Assassin's Guild, who've kidnapped the poor guy. But wait, it gets better. His ex, Belladonna, tries to pull a fast one by making him wear a wedding ring that inflicts extreme pain. Talk about a toxic relationship, am I right? Long story short, Belladonna was just playing mind games. There was no real tithe plot. At the meeting, Gambit exposes her lies and all hell breaks loose. Rogue steps in to prevent any punishments while Jean reveals the assassin's sabotage.
Destroy her! Destroy them all! Bobby, shut up!
And the externals strip Bella of her powers. Gambit's like, peace out, baby, and leaves with the X-Men, vowing never to return. In the meantime, Professor X and Magneto are busy fighting Barbarous in the Savage Land. Just another day in the life of the X-Men. In the year 3999 AD, Cable and his team are throwing down with Apocalypse and his robot army.
Exterminate the vermin!
But then a temporal storm hits and Cable questions his AI about this whole crisis. And boy does the AI drop a bombshell. Apparently, Bishop went back in time to try and prevent a mutant-killing disease, but his little time-traveling stunt ended up screwing Cable's entire timeline. Talk about a butterfly effect gone wrong. Meanwhile, back in Bishop's timeline, nothing has changed. So he goes back to the past to try and stop the disease, but the disease is already spreading like wildfire in the present. As if that wasn't bad enough, anti-mutant sentiments are on the rise, with the people blaming mutants for the plague. After arriving in the past, Bishop opens fire and clashes with the X-Men, but they eventually call a temporary truce because, saving the world comes first. Beast wants to reveal the truth about the plague at a press conference, but little do they know, Graydon Creed Jr. and a shady scientist have some sinister motives of their own. During the press conference, Creed tries to infect Beast with the plague, but Bishop intervenes, exposing Creed's plot. Meanwhile, in 3999, Cable witnesses these events unfold and realizes with horror that he might just have to team up with Apocalypse to save the future. Talk about a tough pill to swallow. In the present day, the X-Men track Creed and his crew down to an underground lab, only to discover that the shady scientist is none other than Apocalypse. And Apocalypse ain't going down without a fight. He vaporizes the X-Men and Creed in one swoop. In the year 3999 AD, Cable is gearing up to go back in time and prevent the X-Men and Bishop from changing his timeline. But before that, his own son Tyler gets erased. Determined to set things right, Cable jumps through the time stream to intercept Bishop and try to convince him not to meddle with the future. But of course, things don't go as planned, and the two end up in a good old-fashioned throwdown.
Looks like you got yourself a powerful enemy, rookie.
Back at his secret base, Cable consults his trusty AI Cube to get the lowdown on the X-Men's strengths and weaknesses. When he learns about Wolverine's healing factor, a light bulb goes off, and he decides to get Wolverine on his team. During Beast's press conference, Cable makes a dramatic entrance, causing a ruckus, and he teleports away with Wolverine. The X-Men waste no time infiltrating Creed's base, only to come face to face with Apocalypse himself. Just when things were getting worse, Cable and Wolverine arrive fashionably late to the party. Apocalypse blasts Wolverine straight into the plague vials, infecting him. But our boy ain't going down that easy. His healing factor kicks into overdrive, counteracting the plague, and the duo make a daring escape as the lab explodes behind them. Bishop heads back to his future, relieved to find the plague averted, but the outlook is still pretty bleak. Back at the X-Mansion, Beast discovers that Wolverine's antibodies could be the key to the plague. Cable returns to his own era. He finds everything restored with his own son Tyler, safe and sound. And oh boy, our favorite shapeshifter Mystique is looking for some adventure, as the shady Mr. Sinister encourages her to try and reclaim Rogue, taking advantage of Professor X's absence. Sure enough, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants comes crashing in, orchestrating an all-out attack on the X-Men. Amidst the chaos, Rogue starts experiencing some seriously messed up hallucinations, leaving her in distress. Back at the mansion, Rogue reveals that the disturbing flashes began right after Xavier left. Oh boy, that can't be good. To make matters worse, Rogue encounters Wolverine, leading to a confrontation where she accidentally whacks him, thinking that he's the blonde woman. She goes to Jean for help, but her hallucinations kick into overdrive, causing her to crash straight through the mansion walls into the sky. Storm tracks her down at the Statue of Liberty, but Rogue starts chasing the illusion all the way to a hospital. She follows the blonde woman's illusion to a hospital room, only to come face to face with Mystique herself. She tricks Rogue into touching her, triggering a flood of memories. Rogue recalls her troubled past after being kicked out by her own father.
You ain't my daughter. Not anymore.
And later adopted by Mystique. She joined up with Mystique, facing off against Miss Marvel and accidentally absorbing her powers permanently. However, it was Xavier who stepped in to help Rogue cope and block out Miss Marvel's memories. She also absorbs Mystique's powers and undergoes a transformation, becoming Miss Marvel herself. Announcing that she has returned, Miss Marvel along with Mystique fly away. Jean gets inside Rogue's psyche, and with her help, they battle Miss Marvel to regain control. Finally, after gaining control, Rogue rejects Mystique, claiming not to be her daughter anymore. The next day, Rogue pays a visit to the real Miss Marvel in the hospital. She brushes Carol's hair, allowing Carol's consciousness to return to her body. As Rogue exits the room, Carol flashes a grateful smile. Man, talk about a heartwarming conclusion. We see Mr. Beast, no, not this guy, working at a hospital, helping to develop a compound to cure blindness. Little does he know, he's about to meet someone who will change his life forever. And who is that girl? It's Carly Ann Crocker, a blind girl who's getting ready for her eye operation.
Is Dr. McCoy with you?
But just when you think it's smooth sailing, the Friends of Humanity come crashing the party, and Beast springs into action, rescuing Carly and Dr. Bolson from the chaos. Talk about a good first impression. The incident prompts Wolverine to go full spy mode, infiltrating the Friends of Humanity while Jean Grey tries to keep a level head, advising against any violent retaliation. Back in New York, Beast gets some bad news, as Carly's father is not happy with a mutant treating his daughter. Aw, poor Beast. Jean steps in and encourages Beast to get back to the hospital. Beast visits Carly at the hospital, but her mutant-hating father puts a stop to any further contact. As if things couldn't get any worse, the hospital gets vandalized, and Carly is kidnapped by the Friends of Humanity. Wolverine infiltrates their HQ, coming face-to-face with none other than Graydon Creed himself. In a twist, Wolverine reveals he met a mutant named Creed in Canada years ago, rattling Graydon to his core. Look at his face, dude! Meanwhile, Creed starts interrogating poor Carly, and Wolverine calls in the X-Men for backup. Wolverine confronts Creed and frees Carly before getting surrounded by the goons. Just then, Cyclops and Jubilee swoop in, pulling off a holographic Sabretooth illusion to expose Graydon as Sabretooth's son. In a heartbreaking moment, Beast realizes the challenges of their world and tells Carly they can't be together yet.
How much further? Trust me, you'd rather not know.
Down in the Savage Land, Professor X and Magneto find themselves captured by the mutates and are brought before their master. Meanwhile, back home, the X-Men are hot on Morph's trail, dragging him down to a makeshift theater. But just when Morph tries warning them about Mr. Sinister, the poor guy gets shocked. And if that wasn't bad enough, the Nasty Boys attack the X-Men and a battle royale breaks out. Over in the Savage Land, Khazar and Zabu make a Dino Stampede distraction so Professor X and Magneto can escape from the mutate captors. But Khazar isn't happy that Magneto is back in town, spilling the beans that he was the one who created the mutates and ditched them. Still, the trio decide to join forces, and Khazar leads them towards Sinister's lair. Meanwhile, back at the theater, the X-Men are still fighting with Sinister and his goons. And just when you think things can't get wilder, Morph turns traitor and helps kidnap Jean. In the Savage Land, Khazar and the gang infiltrate Sinister's base, only to get jumped by the mutates.
Morph's about to do something we might all regret.
Sinister comes back along with Jean and reveals he's got a machine that blocks mutant powers. The X-Men get Xavier's call and head to the Savage Land, totally unaware of the danger ahead. Our story opens with X-Men arriving in Antarctica, but are surprised to know that their powers no longer work. Meanwhile, the Nasty Boys join the party and easily defeat the X-Men, but Wolverine manages to escape and bumps into Khazar and Zabu. After a quick tussle, Khazar and Wolverine join forces to save their friends from Sinister. Inside the lair, the X-Men learn of Sinister's plan to use their power for world domination. He drains Magneto's strength and uses it to enhance Vertigo's powers, only to use it against the X-Men. That is so not cool, Sinister. Meanwhile, Wolverine and Khazar stealthily approach the lair, and in a touching moment, Rogue and Gambit finally confess their true feelings. Wolverine distracts the Nasty Boys while Khazar frees the captives. With their powers restored, our heroes start fighting. Seeing he's about to lose, Sinister attempts one last ploy, as he tries to control Morph's mind to fight against the X-Men. But Xavier frees him and shoots Sinister, exploding him into tiny pieces. As he tries to revive himself back, Jean uses her power to not let that happen and scatters the pieces across the land. The Citadel starts crumbling as the heroes make a daring escape. Later, the X-Men help the Savage Landers rebuild, and Magneto departs thinking of his unchanged rivalry with Professor X and the X-Men. The new season kicks off when Leech, one of the members of the Morlocks, snaps a mysterious device from Lady Deathstrike, sending her and the Reavers on the warpath to attack the Morlocks. Meanwhile, Callisto plots to use the gadget to unlock a crashed alien spaceship, hoping it'll restore her leadership. But Deathstrike tracks them down and proceeds to open the ship, but she gets blasted, realizing that she needs someone with an adamantium claw. The energy surge catches Professor X's attention and he heads off to investigate. At the mansion, Wolverine, Gambit, and Jubilee are just chillin', playing basketball, when Leech calls Wolverine, informing him that someone named Yuriko is waiting for him at the sewers. Heading into the sewers, Wolverine comes face to face with Yuriko, aka Lady Deathstrike.
Oh, don't you recognize me?
Yuriko?
She reveals that she went through a similar adamantium bonding process to get revenge for her father's death at Wolverine's hands years ago. The Reavers capture Wolverine, but Jubilee and Gambit swoop in to bust him out. In the clash, Yuriko gets zapped by the spaceship's force field, and Professor X warns them not to open the ship. But it's already too late, as Wolverine shreds a hole in it anyway to save Yuriko, unleashing the freaky alien monster. The mysterious alien Spirit Drinker starts sucking the souls one by one of the Reavers. Gambit decides to stay to buy some time, but Jubilee sacrifices herself to save Gambit from the creature's clutches. Professor X monitors the situation via Cerebro and summons Beast, Cyclops, and Jean to face the supernatural threat. In the sewers, the Drinker catches up to the group, making them realize destroying it is the only way to free Jubilee's soul. Despite burying the monster under rubble, the Drinker keeps coming. Gambit brings Jubilee's body to safety, while Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike stay behind to fight. But Deathstrike too falls victim, getting her life force drained. Just when things seem hopeless, Cyclops, Jean, Xavier, and Beast show up to help turn the tide. The Drinker briefly escapes, so Xavier and Beast investigate its spaceship prison. Xavier deciphers the alien language of the crashed vessel that once contained the Soul Drinker. Working together, the X-Men force the Drinker onto the electrified third rail, frying the creature for good. Deathstrike and Jubilee regain consciousness, and Deathstrike vows to come back for revenge once she's strong.
We seem to be short one Spirit Drinker.
Back in the X-Mansion, Professor X has a vision of a battle in space, prompting him to summon the X-Men team, except for Rogue, who's on a mission. Xavier orders them to seize the space shuttle and fly to an orbiting space station, where astronaut Peter Corbeau is facing trouble from aliens. Leaving Jubilee and Storm behind at the base, the other X-Men sneak aboard a shuttle and launch into space towards the station. However, upon trying to board the space station, they're knocked out by gas, revealing it has been hijacked by the villain Eric the Red. What a gaseous greeting. Anyway, Eric contacts the Shi'ar Emperor D'Ken, saying he is both Corbeau and the captured X-Men. He tries throwing the X-Men out into space, but Jean Grey comes to the rescue. Eric explains the station was monitoring a wormhole that Lilandra Neramani plans to use to escape the Shi'ar Temple.
My purpose here is to intercept an enemy of my emperor, the rebel Lilandra.
The X-Men attack, but Eric's mind-controlled station crew open fire. At that moment, Lilandra's ship emerges from the wormhole, and Eric tries destroying it with the station's laser, but it fails. In the fight, the X-Men accidentally cause critical damage to the station and retreat to their shuttle. The X-Men rescue Corbeau and the crew as the station explodes. Jean interrupts and psychically learns the controls, forcing everyone into the probe. Jean pilots the shuttle through the radiation, but struggles. Right then, the Phoenix Force manifests around her, allowing them to escape safely back to Earth. Jean guided that shuttle to a splashy landing in the East River and emerges from the water like a fiery phoenix. Man, talk about a grand entrance. But she soon faints and falls into the water, only to be rescued by Wolvie and Cyclops. But the drama doesn't stop there. Jean wakes up in the hospital with no recollection of the Phoenix's power. Meanwhile, Beast stumbles upon Cyclops and Professor X, and they have a heated argument over the mission. Little did they know the Professor was about to face a sinister threat of his own. An evil astral version of Xavier emerges, whose main goal is to cause chaos. Wolverine finds himself trapped in a twisted illusion, battling his nemesis like Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike. and the other X-Men also struggle to escape from the Astral Xavier's clutches. Jean blasts the astral version of Xavier and decides to jet off to Muir Island, where he encounters Lilandra Neramani, who warned him of the ominous threat of the Macron crystal. Just when you thought the suspense couldn't get any higher, the Juggernaut himself bursts onto the scene, adding another layer of chaos. On Muir Island, Moira and Banshee notice Xavier's room is blazing, and they head to look. But Xavier and Lilandra are already under attack by Juggernaut. After a tussle, Juggernaut kidnaps Lilandra, tossing Xavier out the window. However, Banshee comes to the rescue and saves Professor X. At the hospital, Jean Grey suddenly starts burning like a flame, declaring herself as Phoenix. Back in Ireland, Juggernaut and Black Tom meet with Eric the Red, who refuses to pay them for kidnapping Lilandra. So Juggernaut tosses Eric and warns him to pay the promised pay. Lilandra wakes up and tries to contact Xavier using her psychic connection, but she fails to communicate, leading to her mental image of the Cassidy family crest as their only clue. The team heads to Cassidy Keep, where they throw down with Juggernaut, Black Tom, and Eric. As Lilandra frees herself, Juggernaut moves the fight to the rooftop. And surprise, surprise, we have a special guest, Gladiator, who shows up throwing Juggernaut clear across the Atlantic.
Lilandra is under my protection. Depart!
What?
But then, Phoenix Jean swoops in, blasting Gladiator into the stratosphere. Just when you think that this couldn't get any crazier, Emperor Tekken rolls up in his spaceship. So after sending Gladiator packing into the depths of space, Phoenix, aka Jean, quickly recovers from her epic battle. But the troubles are far from over. Those pesky ships belonging to Tekken Neramani were closing in fast. Jean, using her psychic powers, finds out that they need to fight to save the entire galaxy. Without wasting a second, she flies off into the cosmos, sending out psychic distress signals to Doctor Strange, Emma Frost, and Captain Britain. Jean teleports Lilandra along with the X-Men into Lilandra's ship. That's when they learn about the real prize everyone was after, the Macron crystal. This bad boy has the power to destroy the whole galaxy, so you know it's serious business. But the drama doesn't stop there. Just as they're getting their game plan together, the Starjammers burst onto the scene, announcing their plan to kidnap Lilandra and snatch the Macron crystal for themselves. After getting knocked out cold, the X-Men woke up to find that the Starjammers have taken away the Macron crystal and Cyclops as their hostage. Meanwhile, on Tekken's ship, Eric the Red was getting chewed out by the big bad Emperor himself. But then, Corsair sent a holographic message, offering to hand over the Macron crystal and Cyclops in exchange for half of the Shi'ar treasury. Jean teleports the X-Men onto the ship, and Corsair goes after Tekken, only to discover it was actually the Hobgoblin in disguise. After a massive skirmish, the Shi'ar managed to escape, forcing the X-Men to make a hasty retreat.
Stop fooling around, damn it! We gotta go!
But just when they thought they were in the clear, they run into Tekken himself, who has gotten his hands on both Lilandra and the Macron crystal. He starts chanting some kind of incantation while Phoenix tries to stop him, but it's too late. The Phoenix gets sucked right into the crystal, leaving their fate hanging in the balance. The entire universe is in grave danger now that Tekken has gotten his hands on the immense power of the Macron crystal. Jean explains that Tekken is using the crystal's might to create his own twisted universe inside, threatening to trap everyone within. With her power being the only thing capable of stopping this cosmic catastrophe, Jean transforms into her Phoenix, soaring around the Starjammer ship. The crystal's power even reaches to Earth, causing massive disturbances that threaten to tear the planet apart. Just when all seems lost, Phoenix teleports the X-Men and Tekken gets destroyed by the crystal's overwhelming power. The Phoenix Force is then revealed that it has chosen Jean Grey because her extraordinary abilities allow it to communicate with the crystal more effectively. In a heartbreaking moment, Jean declares that she must make the ultimate sacrifice to undo Tekken's devastation once and for all. She soars into space and absorbs the power of the crystal, stopping Tekken from being the ruler of the cosmos. She says a final goodbye to Cyclops.
Goodbye, my love.
And the X-Men returned to Earth, where Professor X stated his belief that the Phoenix would one day rise again. Now grab your tissues, folks, because the X-Men are mourning Jean Grey's demise as she went full Icarus and flew way too close to the sun. Poor Cyclops is heartbroken, weeping over a hologram of his lover. He tells Professor X that he is packing his bags and leaving the team. But this former X-Man isn't moping around for long. He's back at his old orphanage when suddenly, A firecracker of a mutant named Rusty, probably should have named him Sparky, accidentally sets the place ablaze. Rusty's not happy being adopted by Zebedia Kilgrave, who he thinks is a total wacko. His words, not mine. This purple menace straps poor Rusty up alongside Boom Boom and Skids, sounds like an 80s rock band, to try and brainwash them into his mutant minions.
You have a special purpose, Rusty.
With the help of his minions, Kilgrave goes to the governor and forces him to resign. Seeing things fishy, Cyclops goes to meet Kilgrave, but instead gets tricked and thrown into the pool. Sarah helps Cyclops take down Kilgrave's operation, and after some mutant action, Kilgrave makes a hasty retreat via helicopter before burning down the orphanage. But Cyclops is here to save the day. He saves Sarah and decides to return back to the X-Men. Looks like our boy's back home. And he's pleased to know that Jean Grey is still alive and kicking. Well, well, well. If it isn't our old feathery friend Archangel on a quest for vengeance against Apocalypse. Man, talk about holding a grudge. Archangel is so determined to destroy Apocalypse that he's got his minions scrambling to find any weaknesses, like they're playing around a mutant mastermind.
Vengeance will be mine.
Unfortunately, our feathered guy gets his wings clipped by Apocalypse when they meet near the Statue of Liberty. The X-Men take poor old Archangel back to the mansion, and there he asks Rogue to accompany him on his vengeance trip. Rogue initially refuses, but she accepts to help him complete his revenge. But someone's definitely not happy with that. Oh, poor Gambit.
A mighty ship designed by creatures from beyond the stars.
Long story short, the X-Men find the creepy ship, but get trapped in a force field. Soon, the X-Men meet Apocalypse along with Archangel and Rogue. With the help of the ship, the X-Men imprison Apocalypse using a force field, only to be overridden by Apocalypse. Turns out Apocalypse was just toying with Archangel the whole time to satisfy his own ego. The X-Men manage to re-imprison Apocalypse, but he gets the last laugh by flying off in the ship, vowing revenge. Oh boy, get ready for some exciting action for one of the X-Men's former teammates, Iceman, who's caught breaking into a secret government facility. Professor X finds out about this and sends his X-Men team to go catch their old icy friend. When they get back to the facility, they find Iceman, and after some mutant action, the X-Men bring him back to their mansion. There, they put Iceman in a special detention cell to keep him locked up safely.
Gotta be careful about pretty packages. What's inside is usually trouble.
But why was Iceman acting so naughty? Iceman reveals to Beast that he left the X-Men team because his girlfriend Polaris got really hurt on one of their missions. Polaris went away with Iceman, and they were living together. But then one day, Iceman came home and his house was all messed up. And worse, Polaris was gone. That's why Iceman sneaked into that government building and was trying to find out what happened to his girlfriend. After hearing what happened to Iceman's girlfriend, Jubilee frees him from his cell. The two of them go right back to that facility to keep looking for Polaris, but uh-oh, they get caught by another group called X-Factor. The X-Men rush over to the facility too when they realize Jubilee and Iceman are missing. The X-Men fight against X-Factor, but in a shocking twist, Polaris tells Iceman that she actually joined X-Factor in secret, and she's fallen in love with another member named Havoc. Heartbroken, Iceman and the X-Men go back to the mansion. Professor X asks Iceman to rejoin their team, but Iceman just can't do it after losing Polaris, so he leaves on his own again. Back in the Savage Land, Sauron is chased by Khazar and his clan, but just as Khazar was about to make Sauron sleep forever, he gets saved by the mysterious Zaladane, who serves the so-called god Garak. Garak orders Sauron to leave the Savage Land since there aren't enough mutants around for him to drain. So Sauron takes a jet left behind by Magneto and flies off to New York City as his human form, Karl Lykos. Meanwhile, Storm and Rogue are horse riding in Central Park while Beast, Wolverine, and Jubilee are museum hopping. After leaving the museum, they get approached by a disguised Lykos, pretending to be a homeless man. He uses his powers to drain Wolverine's mutant abilities and turns back into Sauron. Rogue and Storm chase after him, but Sauron makes Rogue see Storm as an evil witch. He defeats the X-Men and takes Storm captive back to the Savage Land. The rest of the X-Men go after them to the Savage Land. As soon as they arrive, they get attacked by a huge T-Rex, but their pal Khazar saves them by riding on the T-Rex and traps it in a pit. He tells them Sauron has been kidnapping his tribe to rebuild Mr. Sinister's old fortress. And when a huge statue of Garak appeared in the village, the villagers started to rebel against Sauron and started fighting back. Just then, Sauron shows up and attacks the village and the X-Men. Zaladin starts praying to the Garak statue, which seems to possess Storm. She flies up, shooting lightning everywhere under Garak's control. Poor Storm, who's been brainwashed by the evil god Garak, can't control her incredible weather powers anymore. She's causing crazy flash floods, blizzards, and all kinds of wild weather that's wrecking the savage land.
Green, no!
Carl, is it really you?
To amend his bad things, Lycos takes the responsibility to absorb her powers and snap her out of Garak's mind control, while Wolvie, Beast, and Khazar distract the rampaging Storm, Rogue, and Lycos sneak up behind her. Lycos absorbs her energy, turning into Sauron again, only to turn against the X-Men. Meanwhile, back in Khazar's village, the natives are praying to the Garak statue, hoping to stop his growing control over their home. Storm wakes up, still under Garak's spell, and attacks the villagers until Beast knocks her out again. Right then, Sauron meets up with Zaladin, who shockingly reveals his part in Garak's evil plan is over. The furious Sauron tries brainwashing her, but Garak binds him up tight. Finally, Garak explains his whole wicked scheme and his backstory, when he used to rule the savage land. He reveals that Storm's powers woke him up, so he used Sauron to bring her back and absorb her energy to become free again. With the help of Storm's power, Garak grows stronger and stronger, and finally reaches the volcanoes, where he takes the form of a gigantic body. Just like Garak, Sauron uses the lava to make himself a towering giant too, and gets ready for an earth-shaking battle against Garak. The two titans rumble until a massive explosion turns Garak back into his lifeless stone form. With the day saved, Lycos joins Khazar's people, while the X-Men return home with Storm.
I am frightened, Rogue.
Listen, Sugar, that wasn't you out there.
Back on Muir Island, Jean Grey is observed by Professor X and Moira McTaggart, who unleashes her Phoenix power. Meanwhile, in New York City, Cyclops and Gambit are checking out a music show of the mutant singer Dazzler. But Cyclops receives a vision of Jean, so he leaves the club. When Cyclops leaves, he sees Dazzler attacked by the cyborg Donald Pierce from the Inner Circle Club. He immediately saves her, and they both have a small pep talk before going back to the mansion. Hope Jean doesn't know about that. Jean returns to the X-Mansion, but Cyclops is worried about why Jean hasn't recovered yet.
Phoenix's mind is becoming dominant.
Over at the Inner Circle's evil headquarters, the villains learn about the Phoenix from their psychic spy, Emma Frost. They hatch a wicked scheme to try and control this cosmic force's immense powers. Poor Jean's condition keeps getting worse as the Phoenix wrestles for control of her. When Cyclops leaves to meet Dazzler again, Emma and Mastermind trap Jean in a fantasy dream world, where she's married to Mastermind. But Jean's psychic link to Cyclops allows her to break free for a moment. She teleports right to the club and sees Cyclops kissing Dazzler. Heartbroken by her lover's betrayal, Jean falls back under Mastermind's control and leaves with him. They track Jean to the Inner Circle's headquarters just in time to crash Mastermind and Jean's wedding. But plot twist, Jean turns on her own teammates, revealing the Phoenix has completely possessed her. Professor X tries to locate his X-Men with his mind but gets blocked by a rogue psychic, Emma Frost. And it turns out the X-Men are all chained up in the Inner Circle's headquarters while they watch the possessed Jean Grey inducted as their new queen. But don't count out Wolverine yet. As the Inner Circle argues over who's in charge, Wolverine strikes and busts back inside.
Let's dance.
Keep away!
Cyclops tries desperately to use his psychic bond with Jean to reach her, but Frost and Mastermind combine their mind powers to trap Cyclops in a fog world. He ends up fighting Mastermind until the Phoenix-controlled Jean appears and knocks him out. Wolverine confronts Jean, and she remembers her bond with Logan and breaks free from Mastermind's control. She frees the other X-Men and flies away. The battle between the X-Men and the Inner Circle continues and rages up to the rooftop. When Mastermind tries to control Jean again, the Phoenix Force drives him completely insane with its power. She undergoes an amazing transformation in Dark Phoenix, and Cyclops is heartbroken to see her lover not in control of her body again. And it looks like Dark Phoenix is in no good mood as she blasts the X-Men using her cosmic powers. They quickly regroup and come up with a plan to defeat Phoenix, but they're soon humbled as Dark Phoenix quickly defeats them and flies off mumbling something about grabbing a quick bite. Turns out her idea of a snack is absorbing the energy from an entire sun and then blowing it up. Oi, girl's got an appetite. This is noticed by some Shi'ar researchers, and they ring 911 to warn about this to the Empire. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Cyclops lets the team know that Jean is coming back after getting her power, and Beast volunteers to build a machine to trap the Phoenix. But Dark Phoenix has already returned to Earth and decides to swing by her parents' house.
Prometheus, it's me!
Gambit tries to put a mind control device on her, but surprise, that just makes her angry. Just when things seems to be going down, Professor X jumps into Jean's head and manages to put her in control. But it's already too late, as the space cops arrive to arrest her. The Shi'ar Imperial Guard demand Jean Grey be executed, but Xavier proposes a duel to the death to decide her fate. Everyone's teleported to Lilandra's ship where they argue over executing Jean. Despite Xavier's pleas, the duel is set, and the X-Men train for the cosmic clash. Cyclops and Jean share an intimate moment, with Jean wearing her first X-Men outfit. They teleport to the blue area on the moon for their epic battle royale. One by one, the X-Men fall until only Cyclops and Jean remain. Finally, Cyclops is blasted down.
Professor, there must be some other way! There is not!
Jean unleashes the Dark Phoenix. Lilandra orders her forces to open fire on Phoenix, and Jean regains control but uses her powers to make Lilandra's guns kill her, committing suicide. But suddenly, the Phoenix Force rises from Jean's body, stating the X-Men can revive her by sacrificing some life force. It works, and Jean is back. Things kick off when the Starjammers, chased by Shi'ar forces, crash land on Earth. This is notified to Cyclops and Storm back in the mansion, and their leader, Corsair, emerges, pleading for the X-Men's help. Right then, Cyclops notices Corsair's locket with a photo of himself, Alex, and his mom. Before Corsair can explain, Ragnar demands his surrender and opens fire, forcing the trio underground. As they escape from the robots, Cyclops thinks about the possibility that Corsair is his long-lost father. They escape on a Blackbird, and Corsair recounts his tragic past on how he saved young Scott and Alex from a deadly plane crash. But he could not save his wife Catherine, who was captured and killed by Deathbird. The trio touches down in a jungle, where Corsair is accused of kidnapping a child, Jandra, who witnessed a Shi'ar's murder. Cyclops confronts his father at gunpoint before handing him over to Ragnar. But Cyclops soon learns of the Shi'ar's murder cover-up plan, and teams with a Shi'ar rebel to break Corsair out. With the help from Storm and the Starjammers, they defeat their pursuers, bringing peace between Cyclops and his long-lost father. The episode starts with Wolverine witnessing an alien spaceship crashing down with weird humanoid insect-like creatures called the Colony coming out of it. He starts fighting them, but is soon overwhelmed with numbers and the insects set their crawly sights on Earth. Like we needed more reasons to hate bugs. Meanwhile, Rogue runs into her ex-boyfriend Cody. They both share a kiss before getting electrocuted by the insect-like creatures. Cody wakes her up and offers her a chance to become human again if she joins the colony. Tempted, she brings Insect Boy back to the base, much to Gambit's jealousy. But while the X-Men search for Wolverine, the colony launches a full-on invasion, infecting Wolverine, Cody, and Rogue with alien spores to transform them into bug people. Luckily, Wolverine's healing factor kicks in to reverse the mutation, and he helps Rogue zap back to normal too. But heartbroken, she realizes Cody betrayed her, hoping to make her part of the colony's hive mind. Professor X comes to the rescue. With the help of his telepathic powers, he helps the X-Men escape. Rogue tries to convince Cody, but it's already too late. The episode ends with the colony blasting off from Earth, and Wolverine and Gambit comforting the crying Rogue. All in all, a really bug-czar adventure. Somewhere in Asia, Eugene Wiederspan is digging up a tablet on how to steal the Crimson Gem of Sidorak. Meanwhile, Juggernaut is taking a stroll on the ocean floor after getting shocked by Gladiator. He swims to America and heads to the X-Mansion to thrash Xavier. Xavier tries calling the X-Men, but before they arrive, Juggernaut has already come to the danger room. Juggernaut smashes the fake Hulk and is about to punch Xavier when Eugene grabs the gem, becoming the new Juggernaut. With his power gone, Kane Marco, aka Juggernaut, passes out, and Xavier wants to help his stepbrother. So he dives into Kane's brain but was disappointed to know that his stepfather married his mother only for money. Cyclops and Wolverine hunt down Eugene, who's striking out trying to pick up ladies with his new powers.
What's a nice girl like you doing with a face like this?
The X-Men throw down with Eugene, take back the gem, and return it to Kane, restoring him as Juggernaut. Juggernaut throws the gem into space so no one else can use it, then walks out like nothing happened. Back in Mother Russia, the American scientists are looking for Omega Red to free him. Not out of the goodness of their hearts, but the US government wants Omega Red to help retrieve an unstable nuclear submarine off the coast of Hawaii. In exchange, they deal with Omega Red to make him human again. Omega Red agrees, but demands two of the X-Men come along, Wolverine and Storm. Talk about a deal breaker. On the voyage day, Wolverine and his old nemesis Omega Red somehow resist tearing into each other, and Storm has to push through her claustrophobia in the cramped underwater vessel. Oh boy, that's gotta hurt. Once aboard the sunken Nightmare, Omega Red wastes no time double-crossing the US government. He reveals his plans to fire the missiles carrying nuclear payloads at all the major cities across the world. He then captures the duo and launches the missiles. But Beast rains down the missiles with the help of his jet's laser. Wolverine and Storm are rescued, leaving the unconscious Omega trapped in the disabled submarine along with his nukes. The episode kicks off when Magneto kidnaps some astronauts and crashes into the UN building. On live TV, he announces that he's created a space colony called Asteroid M for mutants to live separately from humans. Watching this, Professor X feels that he's failed his dream of uniting mutants and humans. And even Gambit considers leaving the X-Men for Asteroid M. Poor Rogue is heartbroken knowing that.
Don't worry, Cher, Gambit's got no bags packed.
The Professor, along with Beast and Gambit, meet up with Magneto, who's preparing to send mutants up to his space base. They get word mutants are being held as slaves on Genosha, so they team up with Magneto's crew to fight off Sentinel robots and free the captives. Once on Asteroid M, Magneto sees satellites approaching his colony, so using his powers, he quickly destroys them, and a mutant named Cortez suggests that the humans had launched it against the mutants. But Magneto learns that a rogue missile was actually fired first from their colony, by none other than orders of Fabian Cortez.
It was you who launched the warhead. You are a reckless young fool.
In a shocking twist, Cortez confesses he needs Magneto's powers and blasts him out into outer space. He then turns on the X-Men, framing them for eliminating Magneto. Gambit holds off the angry mob, while Beast along with Professor Xavier escapes. Back on Earth, the X-Men mourn Magneto at his funeral, but Rogue is worried about Gambit, who's now a prisoner on the asteroid. Using Shi'ar tech, Beast prepares the Blackbird to launch a rescue mission. The X-Men infiltrate Asteroid M again, while Magneto, having survived, smashes all the missiles fired by Cortez.
Have mercy! Look like our cue to go.
Outside the X-Mansion, a black storm cloud brews up and zaps the place with lightning like Thor stopping by to say, "Hi guys." Jokes apart, the sudden light show jolts the X-Men, who wake up to check it out. The team steps out to investigate, but only ends up facing illusions of their biggest fears and phobias. But to everyone's surprise, Professor X is just having a bad dream. Back in his dream, Xavier's chilling in a paradise world with the mutants, but refuses to stay in paradise. In astral form, Xavier discovers Shadow King is behind the psychic attack, who's trying to break out of the astral plane. Battling his old nemesis, Xavier realizes he's trapped, and Shadow King plans to hijack his body and free himself. Before Xavier could do anything, Shadow King gives strange nightmares to Wolverine, Storm, and Jubilee, who rush to see Xavier, only to find that the Professor is no longer in control of his body. Jean tries to communicate with Xavier and projects her astral form into Xavier's mind to help defeat Shadow King. In the astral plane, Xavier and Shadow King keep battling until Xavier finally KOs the Shadow King. Finally, Xavier and Jean are back and are grateful for forming the X-Men. At Muir Island, Moira gives Morph a checkup to make sure he's doing good before he rejoins the X-Men, after dealing with being dead, mind-controlled, and generally messed up by his Mr. Sinister. Meanwhile, the Sentinels attack a plant and steal some super strong polymer for their new plan. Maybe they're just collecting materials for a crafts project. Hopefully. At the X-Mansion, the team welcomes back Morph.
You should see your face. Looks something like this.
But before they can celebrate, they hear about the Sentinel raid on Polymer Mart. While they head to the plant, Morph sees the Sentinel footstep, which brings back his PTSD. Wolverine is worried that Morph will freak out seeing the giant robots who almost finished him. The Sentinels kidnap Xavier as Morph freezes up. The X-Men throw down the Sentinels and track their next scheme. Elsewhere in a jungle, Garrick and Trask, while hiding, get jumped by Sentinels despite the X-Men's help. At the base, Master Mold orders Garrick and Trask to build him a new body and wants Xavier's telepathic power. Before that diabolical plan happens, the X-Men arrive and battle the Sentinels. It looks bad until Morph swoops in, shapeshifting into different mutants and buys time for the X-Men. But Master Mold gets the upper hand on Morph before a stalactite drops down and gets crushed like a soda can. The X-Men, Garrick and Morph, bounce out before the cave crumbles, and Morph decides he isn't ready to rejoin just yet. This episode starts with Cyclops searching for Dr. Taylor Prescott, who helped the young X-Men control his optic blasts years ago. But as Cyclops flies towards the mysterious Skull Mesa, his plane is shot down by the shady watchdog enforcer. After getting up from the crash, Cyclops is shocked to find his powerful mutant I-beams have stopped working. A local mutant named Daryl Tanaka gives him a lift into the odd deserted town, where Cyclops flashes back to his struggles fitting in as a kid because of his uncontrollable powers. Cyclops finds out that the residents of Skull Mesa are not so friendly with him, but he is determined to find his mentor. He finds out Taylor has been captured by Solar's gang, who have captured all the town's mutants to mine for gold in the local quarry. Cyclops tries rallying the oppressed mutants to rise up against Solar, but they're too afraid to defy Solar's rule and refuse to be part of the mutiny. Cyclops gets captured by Solar's goons, and just when all seems lost, Tusk finally leads the townspeople to revolt against Solar and his goons. Tanaka restores Cyclops' powers, and with the help of that, he quickly defeats Solar and saves Dr. Prescott. Looks like a demon lurking in the church is shaking the people of Germany. Little do they know that the so-called demon is actually Nightcrawler, seeking refuge in the chapel's sanctuary. Meanwhile, Wolverine, Rogue, and Gambit are hitting the ski slopes of the Alps.
On the beach.
Where are you going?
Demon hunting.
But when Wolverine overhears talk of demons haunting the mountains, the heroes gear up to investigate. During skiing, Gambit's powers get a little too charged, causing a massive avalanche that buries the X-Men alive. They awake in a mysterious chapel, meeting the shady Brother Reinhardt. He tries attacking Gambit, but Rogue gives chase only to get saved by Nightcrawler. Wolvie pounces on Nightcrawler and starts attacking him, but a local monk reveals he's actually a good man despite his demonic looks. Nightcrawler shares his tragic past, having been abandoned by his mother Mystique as an infant before dedicating his life to the church. Reinhardt overhears it and rallies the bloodthirsty villagers to attack the demon at the chapel. A fight breaks out between the X-Men, Nightcrawler, Reinhardt, and the villagers. In an act of heroism, Nightcrawler saves the traitorous Reinhardt's life, finally proving he's no devil.
I have sinned! What have I done?
The year is 1959, and we've got our boy Bishop back in business fighting against an advanced Sentinel, Nimrod. Storm arrives just in time to destroy the robot, but a young Charles Xavier watches in horror, confused about why robots from the future are trying to kill him. In a panic, Xavier accidentally triggers an explosion that tragically claims his life. Back in the present day, Xavier is enjoying a peaceful picnic with Storm and Wolverine, but an explosive event rewrites reality itself into the Age of Apocalypse timeline. They are teleported into a world where the X-Men never existed because Xavier died young. Instead, they lead a ragtag group of mutant rebels fighting the fascist rule of the immortal Apocalypse and his troops. Finally, Bishop and Shard arrive in this hellish alternative reality and realize they're too late and must go further back in time to stop the chaos. They arrive just in time and explain to the professor that they're from the future to save him. But Xavier doesn't trust them until he sees Bishop's memories. Soon, a brawl breaks out, and Xavier escapes from the scene only for Bishop and his crew to search for him. At the same time, the Sentinel Nimrod appears. After witnessing a robot is behind his life, Xavier gets scared and triggers the bomb, causing the entire event that created the Age of Apocalypse in the first place. After the devastating explosion that killed the young Charles Xavier, Bishop, Shard, Wolverine, and Storm decide their only choice is to go further back in time to stop this apocalyptic future. Bishop's fears are confirmed when they return to 2055 to find the mutant-killing AI Master Mold now rules supreme, with a half-roboticized Forge under its control. Just as it seems hopeless, Shard persuades Forge to give him one last chance by sending them back to 1959 to stop Xavier's assassination. Back in 1959, Xavier flees the diner fight again, only to encounter Bishop, who reveals his future death. They quickly defeat Nimrod, and right then, Fitzroy arrives to plant the bomb that will change reality. However, Bishop plays the holographic message, which the future Fitzroy gave him, convincing to return with them. And at the right moment, Wolverine throws the bomb out, saving the day. Finally, the timeline is restored where Xavier, Wolverine, and Storm are back home, enjoying their sunny afternoon, unaware of the temporal Armageddon that they just evaded.
Now, Logan, some women might think that you were flirting.
In Muir Island, Moira and Banshee are trying to contain the mutant Proteus using specialized laser beams. But Proteus breaks free, possessing Banshee's body after Moira fails to understand him. He then tears the island facility apart with his boundless powers before fleeing. The X-Men receive Moira's distress call and race to the island, where Professor X recounts his past relationship with Moira, revealing how they were once engaged until one day she left him for another man. This led to Xavier's tragic accident that cost him his legs and his later romance with Amelia. Landing on the island, Moira warns the X-Men about Proteus's terrifying psychic and reality-distorting powers. While the X-Men search the mainland for Proteus, the Professor learns Moira's ex-husband Joseph is now a high-ranking Scottish official facing an election. Finally, the X-Men catch up with him, and when Wolverine is about to harm Proteus, Moira reveals that he is the son of her and Joseph McTaggart. Proteus attacks the X-Men, quickly defeating them, and starts looking for his father. Proteus finds out about Joseph's next campaign rally and starts looking for him again, only to fight with the X-Men. But he soon escapes, and the final showdown erupts at another rally, with Moira threatening to kill Proteus with a laser to stop his rampage. Still, Professor X makes one last appeal to his humanity, persuading Proteus to allow him inside his broken mind. Xavier is successful in persuading Proteus, and Joseph, realizing his mistake, embraces his son as the paparazzi do their thing. You know, clicking more pictures. At X Factor HQ, Quicksilver takes a call, and it's his sister Scarlet Witch who drops a bomb that their dad Django is on his deathbed. Their father, Django Maximoff, confesses that he and his wife Maria only adopted the twins as infants from Bova the Animorph. Before his final breath, he urges the twins to find Bova to learn about their real parents. Meanwhile, at the X Mansion, Magneto himself shows up seeking Professor X's help.
Wolverine was on sentry duty. What have you done to him?
He learns that his presumed dead wife Magda is still alive, hiding out in the Balkans. Knowing that, Xavier sends Wolvie as Magneto's bodyguard to investigate. Quicksilver and Wanda track down Bova, and she reveals that their mother Magda fled their village after a mutant attack during the twins' birth, only to perish delivering them on the mountain. This enrages Quicksilver, who vows vengeance on the unknown mutant who orphaned them. Little do they know, the mutant was none other than Magneto, who is their biological father. After a brief clash between Magneto and the Maximoff twins, the High Evolutionary captures the entire family, along with Wolverine, and imprisons them at Mount Woundagore to strip them of their powers for their sick experiments. And their leader even turns Wolverine into a monstrous beast. But soon, Professor X and Beast arrive in the Blackbird jet. They not only free their teammates, but finally reverse Wolverine's monstrous transformation. In the aftermath, Magneto reunites with his children Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, but they reject him for not being a responsible parent and leave the place. The episode begins at a meeting of the Anti-Mutant Friends of Humanity group. The leader discussed their former head, Graydon Creed Jr., whom they have not forgiven for being the son of a mutant and nearly wiping them out. Talk about a deal breaker. In a bid to be allowed back into the FOH, Creed promises to kill any other mutant relatives he may have after the group's investigation uncovered more mutants in his family tree. Meanwhile, at the X Mansion, Nightcrawler receives a letter stating his birth mother will be killed unless he follows the demands. Not knowing who his mother is, he requests Wolverine, Rogue, and Jubilee to accompany him. They arrive at a dam where the shape-shifting mutant Mystique reveals herself and says she is Nightcrawler's mother, making him and Rogue foster siblings.
You are my brother? Don't ever call me brother.
But their reunion is cut short when Graydon Creed and FOH troops ambush the mutants. During the chaos, Nightcrawler confronts Mystique about abandoning him as a baby. The FOH calls in attack helicopters to gun down the mutants, while Creed shoots Mystique, causing her to fall from the dam into the waters below. Creed then fires missiles towards Nightcrawler, but it destroys the dam, creating a massive tidal wave that sweeps up his own helicopter. Thinking both Mystique and Creed say goodbye to the world, the X-Men along with Nightcrawler go back to their base. However, Mystique somehow survives and escapes into the woods. As for Creed, he was rescued by FOH and soon punished for failing them again by taking him to see his beloved father Sabretooth. Oh, family bonding at its finest. The episode opens with a flashback of Wolverine being attacked by Sabretooth in a cabin, showing some long-standing conflict. However, it's just a nightmare Wolverine is experiencing back at the mansion, thrashing violently in his sleep. Professor X tries to telepathically calm him, but Wolverine is awake and immediately flees the mansion after seeing some mysterious coordinates and a photo of Silver Fox. Wolverine follows the coordinates to the abandoned Weapon X facility, triggering flashbacks of his horrific experiences there as a part of their mutant killing program. Beast quickly tracks him down, concerned he's having a PTSD episode, remembering his training to be a living weapon. Sabretooth also shows up, revealing he too received coordinates, and he thinks Wolverine is the one who set them as a trap. The two cats engage in brutal combat, but both start having implanted memories of fighting their former Weapon X teammate, Omega Red. Just then, Silver Fox arrives with Maverick, who reveals that Weapon X must have tampered with all of their memories about each other in the program. Beast discovers a Weapon X computer, detailing how they all underwent hypnotic mind control to be programmed as sleeper agents.
The garbage! Our memories are some Chrome Dome science project!
They unlock a secure door with their hand scan, only to be greeted by a message announcing the killer robot Talos has been set to terminate them. After taking down the first Talos, they realize more will be coming until they're all dead. Beast drags them to safety before the entire facility explodes. In the aftermath, the group splits off to deal with their shattered memories and question what's real on their own. I guess group therapy was never an option. Struggling with his infamous anger issues, Wolverine undergoes therapy sessions with Professor X at the X Mansion. However, feeling frustrated with the lack of progress, Wolverine decides to take matters into his own hands and announces he's leaving for Japan. Upon arriving in Japan, Wolverine meets the monk Oku, who begins teaching him meditation techniques. Wolverine settles into his new peaceful life in a village, befriending a young girl named Kasara. Soon after, Japanese mobsters arrive in the village demanding extortionate protection money that the poor villagers cannot afford to pay. When Sochi, Kasara's brother, gets angry, the Silver Samurai shows up and doubles the payment demand, giving them 2 days before burning down the village temple. With the villagers under threat, Wolverine is tempted to unleash his rage on the mobsters, but remembers Oku's teachings about remaining calm. The villagers instead opt to set strategic traps in the woods to resist the mobsters when they return. Meanwhile, Jubilee tracks him down to the village in Japan, concerned for his well-being after he left the X-Men. When the mobsters return, the villagers are able to fend off most of them thanks to their traps, but the Silver Samurai arrives as well. With no other choice, Wolverine fights using his claws and quickly defeats them, earning the respect of the villagers. Having resolved the conflict and found a sense of peace, Wolverine agrees to return to the X-Men with Jubilee, bringing his unique Japan experience full circle. It's Christmas time, and the X-Men are decorating the Christmas tree in their X Mansion.
The day you catch me singing Jingle Bells is the day pigs fly.
After that, Wolvie, Storm, and Jubilee go for Christmas shopping, and right then the Morlocks steal an ambulance for medicine to help sick Leech. So Wolverine, along with the crew, heads to the sewers, where Callisto taunts Storm for seeing the Morlocks only when they suffer. Wolvie reveals that he's not going to survive the trip proposed by Storm. However, Storm convinces Wolvie to do a blood transfusion to Leech using his healing blood. Back at the mansion, Professor X informs the other X-Men to head towards the Morlocks. Beast comes on to check, and Leech is back alive with the help of Wolvie's blood. Storm gives leadership back to Callisto before things get worse underground. The X-Men decide to share Christmas dinner with the Morlocks. In the end, the X-Men gave the Morlocks their very first nice Christmas.
Oh! Oof! What's this here you're cooking?
It's called food, Gambit.
In the far future, Cable and his clan launch an attack on Apocalypse's base in Cairo. However, Apocalypse was one step ahead and sets a trap, allowing him to capture Cable's time-traveling technology. Apocalypse uses this time machine to send himself into the past, but his temporal interference has the catastrophic consequence of causing Bishop to become unstuck in his timeline. Bishop finds himself at a nexus point, where different timelines intersect, guided by this guy Bender. Meanwhile, in the present day, Cyclops and Jean are finally having another attempt at their oft-delayed wedding, which succeeds this time around. But their newlywed bliss is shattered when the Nasty Boys attack and kidnap Jean. Professor X tries using his powerful psychic amplifier Cerebro to locate Jean, but he and Jubilee are ambushed at the X Mansion by Mr. Sinister. Back in Bishop's era, his teammates Forge and Shard notice his disappearance. Shard uses her powers to send herself backward through time to the present X-Men's era, hoping to find Bishop there. And just in time, she prevents Mr. Sinister from abducting Professor X. At Sinister's base, it's revealed to the captive Jean that Sinister's attack was orchestrated under orders from none other than Apocalypse. This guy definitely needs to take a break. Meanwhile, the Deathbird is launching an all-out attack against her sister Lilandra Nuramani, the Empress of the Sha'ar. But surprisingly, Apocalypse, who is supposedly the ally of Deathbird, lays eyes on Oracle of the Sha'ar Imperial Guard and kidnaps her. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Cyclops can't help but wonder why he wasn't kidnapped, just like always getting kidnapped with Jean. At the X-Mansion, Cyclops suggests using Xavier as bait, as Apocalypse seems to be targeting mutants and telepathic abilities. It's a risky gambit, but when the fate of the world is at stake, the X-Men know they must take bold action. But the chaos is far from over.
What are you gonna do? Eat your spinach?
Sabretooth and the shape-shifting Mystique join the fight, and with the arrival of Magneto, it makes it easy for Apocalypse to capture one more mutant. Meanwhile, in the future, Cable and Tyler are scaling a cliff and have their sights set on a time machine that could be their only hope of traveling back to the present. This episode starts with Cable pulling off a daring heist, sneaking into a high-security facility to steal a powerful time machine. Meanwhile, his son Tyler finds himself under attack from a swarm of robots while keeping watch outside. With the enemies closing in, Cable makes a desperate attempt to travel through time, unaware that Apocalypse has been observing his movements and diverts Cable's journey to the present day.
What am I doing here?
I was about to ask you the very same thing.
Reunited with the X-Men, Cable quickly gets through Apocalypse's plot to kidnap powerful psychic mutants. The captured Sabretooth is subjected to interrogation by Cyclops, but the feral mutant remains tight-lipped. When Cyclops' interrogation tactics fail, Wolverine takes over. Finally, Sabretooth cracks, and Professor X attempts to look into his mind only to find cryptic visions of clocks and temporal imagery. Realizing that their only hope lies in confronting Apocalypse at the source of his power, the X-Men travel back to ancient Egypt when the Lazarus Chamber was first constructed. And oh boy, they meet the Horsemen who are ready to combat them. As Cyclops, Gambit, and Archangel keep them engaged, Professor X, Beast, Wolverine, and Cable go deeper into the pyramid. But it turns out to be none other than Mystique, who uses her powers to turn into Apocalypse, fooling the X-Men. In the process, Professor X gets kidnapped, with Cable in disbelief over what had happened. After the loss of Professor X and Wolverine to Apocalypse's clutches, Cable throws a grenade at the Lazarus Chamber in a bid to cut off his source of immortality. But Apocalypse merely scoffs at their futile effort, revealing that he has transcended the need for the chamber, drawing his endless life force directly from the axis of time itself. Surprise, surprise, Magneto and Mystique have a change of heart and turn against Apocalypse. They defeat Apocalypse, but he soon returns with the help of his horsemen. Talk about loyal supporters. In a desperate bid, Magneto frees Wolverine, but their combined power is no match for the ancient mutant's overwhelming ability. Just as all seems lost, Cable arrives at the Axis, frees Psylocke and the other psychics. The axis of time begins collapsing, and seizing this chance, the psychics channel their vast powers, trapping Apocalypse in the real world, destroying his link to the energies of the Lazarus Chamber. As reality reasserts itself, Bishop, Shard, and Cable all find their way back to their proper timeline. The X-Men return home, leaving the ruins of the Axis behind. Finally, Bender unveils his true identity as Immortus, vowing to rebuild the axis of time and restore order to the fractured reality left by Apocalypse. Oh boy, Wolverine's nemesis Sabretooth is back and tears down the NYPD like a savage beast. Luckily, Beast and Jubilee capture him and bring him back to the X-Mansion. Jubilee asks Professor X if they should let Wolverine know they caught his biggest enemy, Sabretooth. But Professor X is like, not today. Well, that was a mistake because you can't keep stuff from Wolvie. Wolverine sniffs out the situation and storms down to confront his nemesis, only to realize it isn't even Sabretooth at all. Just when you thought things couldn't get crazier, Mr. Sinister calls the X-Men for help as he's being attacked by some unknown monster. Before Professor X can answer, he gets attacked by a tentacle. Beast is chilling in his lab when suddenly he gets attacked by mysterious aliens.
Oh my stars!
Logan!
He finally escapes from the strange entity with the help of an alien, who introduces himself as Warlock. Warlock explains that the strange entity is Phalanx, who wants to take over the planet. So, Beast heads to a lab and warns the president about the Phalanx invasion, but it's too late, as they've already got the president first. So Beast gets help from Forge and Quicksilver to fight back against the Phalanx. Surprisingly, Mr. Sinister is up for the rescue and saves Beast and the rest of the crew, who then escape from the Phalanx. As they head to Muir Island, they witness the evil Phalanx take over the Empire State Building and turn it into a giant spire weapon to help them conquer the Earth. While escaping the Phalanx using Mr. Sinister's jet, Beast, Forge, and their new alien buddy Warlock try to figure out how to stop the Phalanx invasion. Meanwhile, poor Wolverine has been captured by the Phalanx, and Hodge starts rambling about using Wolverine's adamantium bones as some kind of alien conductor. Beast, along with Forge, try to find a solution on Muir Island. But just as they're looking up the cure, the Phalanx crash the island and assimilate Moira and Banshee. With nowhere else to turn, the heroes go to Magneto for help, rescuing his son Quicksilver, mutants, and the entire humanity. Magneto agrees and takes a sample to try a technovirus cure, only for it to shapeshift into Hodge's face. Soon, Sinister, Forge, and Amelia blast into the scene, saving the X-Men from the Phalanx control. The real MVP is Warlock, who merges with the virus into the Phalanx collective mind, and gives that alien threat a hard reboot it won't recover from. Finally, the X-Men, along with Warlock and his lover, reunite. But most importantly, the X-Men get to live another day. As the nation's capital is battered by severe storms with some crazy yellow and purple clouds, the media immediately blame the mutants. Man, they just can't catch a break. The X-Men fly in to try and get a handle on this unnatural weather situation. Storm tries her powers to calm the chaos, but the storm's having none of it and strikes her down. Luckily, Arkin sweeps in to save the day and stop the storm with remote control. How convenient. Turns out, Arkin was behind the chaos as a means to summon Storm to his home planet, Polemarchus. The duo return to Polemarchus, and we learn that Arkin's world is threatened by killer cosmic storms that could break down the barriers protecting the population from deadly space radiation. Back on Earth, the X-Men decipher the clue left behind by Arkin and open a portal to Polemarchus. But the welcome is not as friendly as the angry mobs and robots start attacking them. Not the best way to make your first impression. Storm tries to stop the massive storm system, but her powers don't work. She then finds out that the energy transmitter is behind these massive storms. But Arkin's like, oh, my bad, can't turn that off. Of course, Storm is infatuated by Arkin and forgets about the transmitter, and finally stopping the storm, saving Polemarchus from destruction. The X-Men get captured, but eventually break out of the prison to save Storm.
You must realize that when we lost contact with you, we feared your life was in jeopardy.
After she wakes up and explains everything, the fighting stops, and she stops the storm once again. Storm and Arkin decide to take their romance to the next level, when Arkin announces to his citizens that Storm is their new queen. Storm decides to tie the knot with Arkin after knowing him for like a day. The X-Men are understandably skeptical about this unexpected space romance. Meanwhile, Arkin, knowing that his planet lacks people, decides to attack the neighboring planet.
We attack tonight! Show no mercy.
Things start to get fishy when Jubilee bumps into one of Arkin's enslaved workers and she panics, creating doubts in Jubilee and Storm's mind, because forced labor is totally casual on this planet. Poor Storm is still in denial mode, totally falling for Arkin's lies about the massive war fleet being a wedding present. Wolverine, Beast, and Cyclops manage to link up with the Polemarchus rebellion against Arkin's tyrannical reign. All this is happening while Storm tries desperately to convince Jubilee that her fiancé is a total sweetheart. Storm finally finds the truth when the X-Men and Rebel forces crash into the couple's engagement party, exposing Arkin's tyranny. Storm's heartbroken and tries to destroy everything, but is stopped by Jubilee, who convinces her not to do it. Finally, the X-Men return to Earth, and Storm says goodbye to her boyfriend while destroying her statue. The story kicks off with a young boy being hunted by a group called the Hounds. They believe this child is the vessel that will allow the ancient mutant villain Apocalypse to escape his imprisonment in the astral plane and enter the physical world. The Hounds report their failure to capture the boy back to their leader, Fabian Cortez, at their base. And Cortez relays this setback to Apocalypse, who is communicating with them through a statue housing his astral form. Meanwhile, Beast and Jubilee are in South America on an archaeological field trip. Inside the temple, one of the hounds named Caliban is thrashed by Cortez for failing to kidnap the boy. When they detect Beast and Jubilee, they soon capture them and bring them in front of Cortez. When Beast nobly offers to take Jubilee's place as Apocalypse's vessel, Cortez opts to increase Beast's mutation instead, transforming him into a beast. I mean, like the real beast.
Sorry, Caliban would like to look for another vessel.
Fool!
As Cortez prepares to conduct the ritual to transfer Apocalypse into Jubilee's body, the feral beast returns to the temple to stop them. His rampage causes the entire chamber to start collapsing. In the chaos, Cortez strips away both Caliban's and the feral beast's enhanced abilities, but with the help of Caliban, Jubilee is able to fire at Cortez, allowing her, Beast, and Caliban to escape. With his plans ruined, Apocalypse appears before Cortez and declares he will instead take Cortez's body as his new vessel, possessing the evil mutant against his will as punishment. In the present day, 3 army officers are paying respects at the grave of their fallen comrade in Paris. They notice a man standing next to the grave, who turns out to be Wolvie, there to visit Cocteau's grave. But he's not only there to pay his respect, but for revenge. The story flashes back to 1944 when Wolverine, working for the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, was on a mission in Paris to rescue André Cocteau. He meets up with contacts Justine Cocteau and Samuel Sawyer. They immediately get into a fight with Nazis, but Captain America arrives to help. That was a surprising entry.
I'm Captain America. Really? I never would have guessed.
Wolverine and Cap climb a mountain using Wolverine's claw gloves, as he didn't yet have his adamantium bonding. They fight more Nazis, break into a facility, and find it has huge robot sentry guards. They find Andre, but he refuses to leave as he helped build the robots. This sets off an alarm, alerting the villain Red Skull. Red Skull captures Wolverine and Cap, putting them in a torture chamber. But Wolverine breaks free after Skull leaves and frees Cap too. They go to confront Red Skull and his troops as the facility begins exploding. Red Skull and the scientist Andre escape by jet, but Wolverine and Cap fail to hang on to the jet's wings, falling to the ground below, though surviving. Back in the present, Justine reveals to Wolverine that Andre was secretly an American agent trying to infiltrate the Nazis by gaining Red Skull's trust. With this newfound context, Wolverine scratches Hero on Andre's grave marker and leaves the place with Justine. In Kentucky, a mine starts falling apart, but Sam comes to the rescue using his mutant powers to save himself, his father Edward, and another miner. This heroic act makes Sam a local celebrity, drawing the attention of a government agent named Kirkland who wants to recruit him. Beast also learns of the rescue and informs his teammates, leading Rogue to investigate since she's from the South. Since Sam rejected Kirkland's offer, he starts spreading lies to the locals, claiming mutants caused trouble on a nearby farm. Sam meets Rogue, who introduces herself as LeBeau, but Sam is not interested in leaving the town. After Rogue reports back to her failed attempt to bring Sam, Professor X sends Gambit to spy on the government. Unfortunately, Gambit is captured and learns that the government is building mind control technology to control mutant powers, because free will is just too mainstream these days, at least for the mutants.
I heard you was making time with Shelley. What are you talking about?
While Sam gets into a fight with locals, Gambit is the test subject for the mind control chip instead, until Professor X and Beast rescue him before it's implanted. Due to Kirkland's efforts, an anti-mutant mob marches onto Sam's house. Sam's father, Edward, directs them to the X-Men, while Sam, who's shoved into a helicopter, crashes when he uses his powers. The X-Men and Sam fight back, forcing the government forces to retreat and abandon their plans for the young mutant. It's London, 1888, and Jack the Ripper is slicing and dicing his way through victims. Xavier is put on the case by Scotland Yard to stop the serial killer from turning more ladies into human confetti. Xavier has a hunch the killer is Nathaniel Essex, a respected scientist, and Xavier has been chasing him for 30 years since their beef began. In a flashback, Essex shows Xavier his creepy basement lab where he kept mutants locked up like Pokemon. Totally grossed out, Xavier fights with Essex, and the mutants bust out during the rumble. One of the mutants, Thomas Flannery, accidentally torches the building with his powers, and a riot breaks out, leading to Essex's fleeing. Now, we finally know that Essex is none other than Mr. Sinister, who has cooked up Jack like Frankenstein's monster. Xavier and the police burst into Sinister's base, but he had already escaped to America, leaving behind a book that in the present day is still kept by Professor X near his nightstand. The final episode of the X-Men starts at a press conference, where the mutant-hating Henry Peter Garrick tries to push through an anti-mutant containment bill and stir up hatred towards mutants. The ill Professor X, who has been fighting this legislation, arrives to publicly oppose Garrick. In a shocking turn, Garrick thinks Xavier is a mutant and shoots him with some sort of energy disruptor weapon. This causes the Professor's powers to spiral out of control, putting him in a coma. The X-Men rush Xavier onto the Blackbird, where Beast examines him and reveals their leader is fighting for his life. Meanwhile, the shooting of the Professor sparks outrage and uprisings across the mutant community. And surprise, surprise, Magneto is chosen to lead the angry mutant forces against humans, and rallies them all on the island nation of Genosha. In a desperate bid to calm the riots, Morph impersonates Xavier in a televised broadcast, but fails to stop the mutant fury.
Hey, when the planet's falling apart, who'd want to be anywhere else but with you guys?
Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Wolverine infiltrate the now mutant-controlled island and battle Magneto. But the fighting stops when Magneto learns of Xavier's condition, and Jean suggests Magneto uses powers to boost Xavier's mind so they can contact Lilandra for help. At first, unwilling to abandon his mutant revolution, Magneto ultimately agrees out of respect for Xavier. Back at the mansion, he enables Xavier to psychically call out to Lilandra.
You have more pressing business to attend to than nursing an old friend.
Nothing more important.
And Xavier briefly wakes up from his coma to bid farewell to his students. Lilandra arrives and says the only way to save Xavier's life is for him to receive treatment on her Sha'ar Empire's homeworld. So in a heartbreaking moment, Lilandra departs with Xavier.
But my spirit shall remain among you,
leaving the X-Men and Magneto behind on Earth. And just like that, we've reached the end of the classic X-Men animated series. I hope you all had a lot of fun going back and remembering such an awesome show. But before we finish up, I have to ask, if you could have any special power like the X-Men, what power would you want? Comment below, and also don't forget to check out the other awesome videos that we make on this channel. We'll see you next time.